So, Johnny, are you ready to take another call?
Yes, ma'am.
I have
I
one
am.
in mind. We will talk to Joshua next. Hello, Joshua. You were on the Atheist Experience. What would you like to discuss today?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Yes,
Hello.
so I would like to discuss. Hi, so I would like to discuss my conversion to Christianity and my receiving the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've done that too.
I'm just going to kind of go over my testimony. I'm actually a Christian socialist, so I'm not a part of the evangelical right or any of that crap.
Okay.
So that we're clear. But I'm just kind of going to read you my testimony as I've kind of recorded it on Reddit, just so this kind of makes things easier.
If I could ask a favor, Joshua, a lot of times people, they get on the show and they want to give the full fleshed out, detailed tapestry of their lives. And although that is meaningful and interesting and essential to really understanding a person, it does not make for the best YouTube. So if you're going to tell your experience, no disrespect to your experience, but could you trim it a lot?
And maybe to have a discussion. We also aren't looking for proselytization. So
Yeah.
what would be ideal in the interest of dialogue is just what you think is relevant or pertinent that you would like to discuss with us, as opposed to like a monologue for us to simply listen to, as this show is a discussion show.
I
Even better.
understand, but there's not going to be background. I'm actually going to start the day immediately before. There's not going to be a whole backstory.
Okay, go if you can give us the Coles Notes version, the synopsis of what it is. That would be great. And just keep in mind, though, that if it does become proselytization, I will have to interrupt you, so that we're not simply just having a TED talk about your conversion.
Yeah,
go right ahead.
Go right ahead. So I was at Parliament Hill in Ottawa the day before my conversion. This is for Canada's National Day of Truth and Reconciliation on the 30th of October. I began feeling an incredibly powerful, positive spiritual force as I listened to our Indigenous leaders speak about their lived experiences. Without going into any more details, we're going to go back to the next morning of my vacation in Toronto, Friday, October 1st, where I'd received the Holy Spirit. It was early the next morning after having slept a couple of hours in the hotel. So in particular, I felt something that was probably by the apostles and Acts. It was all human language, no glossolalia or any of that speaking in tongues bullshit. It was basically my eyes started flooding with tears. I heard the words that all made sense, and I felt this immense sense of serenity and joy. Since then, I received these immense spiritual gifts that have allowed me to unburden myself for the past 7 years of tribulation and communicate far more effectively in both English and in French. Again, keeping things very general. I had some incredible conversations, far beyond anything that I had been able to do before, and again, very general. It feels like
hey, Joshua, pause.
Yeah.
Are you on speakerphone right now?
Yes, I am.
Please get off speakerphone.
I'm on headphones, actually.
Get off headphones and put the phone up to your ear.
Yes, I'll be happy. You just give me a moment, please.
Okay, that sounds good. And then I'd like to, before we progress anymore, I'd like to have a little bit of a conversation about what you've laid out to us already and what the relevance might be to a conversation. Can you hear us again? You there, Joshua?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Crystalline.
So what are you looking for from me?
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like I get the gist of it. I get the context in which it took place, and I get that you had an experience. But I'm not certain why the call, though. So did you call us just to relay the experience, or do you think it's something that should be compelling to us as well? And if so, why?
Or are you doubting that it was an experience? Do you want explanations to what that experience could have been?
I'm not doubting that it was an experience. My point here is more that I don't necessarily believe that my spiritual path is universal to everyone. I believe that it's possible to do God's work, whether you're a Christian, whether you're an atheist, a Jew, a Sikh, whatever else. So I don't believe in exclusive revelation or exclusive salvation, but my path is Christianity, likely through the United Church of Canada.
Okay, so the reason that you called in is because you wanted to express to people, non-believers and believers alike, that your version of Christianity is inclusive of them. Is that what I'm gleaning from this conversation? So
yes, I'm a universalist with respect to salvation.
Okay.
I don't believe that my path is universal with respect to truth and spiritual revelation. I believe it to be my walk with God.
Okay, so if that's your experience and if that's your specific belief, then neat, right? But there you must understand that it's certainly not going to be everybody's, and that your inclusiveness is great. I love me some inclusiveness. Yeah. That's awesome, but that doesn't make something true, nor is it particularly compelling. Do you feel as though you were compelled to call us because you wanted us to know that you include us, or do you perceive in salvation, which also, by the way, I don't feel like I need it, because I still don't think it's true. No. So you saying your particular belief system allows for it, right. I hate to say meaningless, but it's kind of meaningless to somebody like me.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, what I'm asking is, on what level do you want us to respond to what you've presented to us? Do you want us to try to debunk, or do you want us to say good job, or do you want us to say that's interesting? And this is honest question. What is it? How do you want to talk about it?
All right. So actually, in that case, I'm just going to skip most of the personal stuff, and I'm going to go to what I believe the Bible has to say, and what I believe the truth is about Jesus' sacrifice and the Great Commission. Would that be a more interesting topic?
I would love to hear what the truth is about Jesus' sacrifice. Jesus sacrifice. Yeah, please, let's talk about that.
Right. So I'm convinced that the most essential component of Jesus' sacrifice is in his choosing to forgo, in spite of his intellect, wisdom, and charisma, any wealth and worldly power, so as to serve as one of God's avatars through his work as a teacher, spiritual mentor, and community leader.
That's predicated under the assumption, though, that he would have had those available to him and chose otherwise, despite the fact that being something that, even if it was available to him, was something that he desired.
It's predicated also on the notion that he existed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that he existed and also was the Son of God. So it's presuppositional, right? So you're saying I have to take several assumptions in order to even continue this argument, right? So I have to assume that there was a Jesus as depicted in the Bible, that he was the Son of God, that he had this path available to him, that he chose otherwise, that choosing otherwise was virtuous, and that says something about salvation. And I have difficulty buying into most of that.
Joshua, we're not there yet. You're pretty far along this path. And we're going to back it all the way up, because back that claim up, because can you give us some evidence that that Jesus was as he is claimed to be in the Bible? Because if we keep on assuming all these things that you're taking for granted, we're like most of the way there for you, and now it's just biblical interpretation. It's metaphysical speculation. But back it up all the way. Was there a Jesus? Was he as depicted in the Bible? And give us some proof of that. We kind of need that. As a metaphor,
no,
I'm fine with talking about it, but then it becomes literary interpretation. But I don't think you're interested in literary interpretation. I think you're interested in something else, and I'd love to know what that is.
I actually don't care whether or not a literal Jesus existed. I don't care. I care more about Jesus as a metaphor, insofar as there may have been this man who chose to forego worldly wealth and power to serve as a mentor, a spiritual teacher, and a community leader. Whether it actually happened is irrelevant to me. I believe that it happened, but I don't require others to. I don't believe that it's a necessary component of salvation.
So you're just inspired by a concept, really, is what you're saying. So you're saying the concept that at any point in history, there could be a person who fulfills these, sort of the things that I see as virtuous. The fact that that could be and it could be anyone in this instance too, if you're using it as a metaphor, it could be Steve as opposed to Jesus. It could be Shannon as opposed to Jesus. It could be insert name here. It's the action that you find virtuous and inspiring. Is that that's what I'm hearing? So that doesn't lead to a belief in God. It doesn't specifically need to be Jesus. You're just saying the fact that at any point in time in history, somebody could fulfill these things I think are virtuous is inspiring to me.
That's what I'm hearing too. Is that correct?
Right. That's yes, that's correct. I can't necessarily prove that the literal Jesus as depicted in the Bible existed, nor do I necessarily give a damn.
Okay, so then if you don't care and it's just something that inspires you, you talked about salvation. What is salvation in your view? What is it? Is it so I get out of, is that, because if Jesus doesn't exist, maybe, then does hell exist? Does obliteration exist? Does heaven exist? What is a salvation state in your worldview?
And at that point, does sin even exist too? Like you would go all the way back, is that Jesus died to absolve sin. Does the concept of sin even exist? And now is there even absolution? Because if you don't need a literal Jesus.
Yeah, great. So what is it? What is salvation, and does sin exist in your worldview?
Right. So we'll actually begin with salvation. I'm personally a Trinitarian and a Universalist. Essentially what I believe is that anybody who walks one of those spiritual paths akin to the example that Jesus led is saved, irrespective of whether they're Christian, whether they're atheist, Jew, Baha'i, Sikh, whatever. I also believe that not everybody is saved immediately, but that all people, upon death,
that doesn't answer Johnny's question, though.
Yes.
Right. So, but can you answer Johnny's question, though? Because Johnny's question is an important one, right? Because now you're getting into disparate belief systems as well. If you're saying it doesn't even matter to you if a literal Jesus exists, but then you're talking about salvation. And the concept of Jesus is very intrinsically tied to salvation via the absolution of sin that was only done through him. So can you answer Johnny's question about what is salvation and is there sin, please?
Saving from what? What is salvation?
Salvation is basically being delivered from a shitty life and from a shitty afterlife through following this example. However, I believe that salvation is universal for those who choose to follow the example. Those who don't choose, upon their deaths, are given kind of the option. You can either go through some sort of perfection, not like torturous or like hellish in a purgatorial sense, but more chance of redemption.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm fully understanding what you're saying. So I'm just going to interrupt you for a sec because I think this is an important point. So you're saying salvation is just if you follow one person's example, and you haven't gotten to the sin yet. If you follow one person's example, then you get rewarded. And that's what salvation is based on what you're articulating. Right. And if you don't follow that one person's example, you could potentially get punished, but then you get a second chance somehow to have another kick at the can so that you could choose whether or not you get the reward. So salvation is a reward for following a specific behavioral pattern. So why would people be rewarded for following that behavioral pattern? So what is it about that behavioral pattern that entails reward and not following that behavioral pattern means that you have that reward not either relinquished from you or not given to you. Why?
Okay, so first of all, I personally believe that hell does literally exist, but that nobody actually goes there.
That is okay. That is not the answer to the question, though.
Yeah.
It's a mild deflection. So why would God choose to reward one behavioral pattern and relinquish that reward from other behavioral patterns?
Because I believe that the Jesus Christ, as presented in the Bible, was a sort of radical, was an extremely intelligent, wise, and charismatic man. I believe it was very likely that he could have achieved incredible wealth, incredible temporal power, but chose not to, so that he could do as much good as possible.
Not an answer to the question, though. That's just you appealing to the benefit, to the virtue of that behavioral pattern. That's not you explaining why that behavioral pattern in and of itself would constitute a God saying you guys get a free pass into this paradise, and everybody else who doesn't follow that behavioral pattern somehow either has that relinquished from them or is punished.
Yeah, and I'm also that's that. And also, what this all sounds like to me is literary interpretation, speculation, and I don't know, just expounding upon what you would like to be true. I don't want to make another Lord of the Rings reference, but I want to go to the Undying Lands. I want to meet the Valar. I want to meet Fëanor in the fourth. After the second song of the Ainur, but that doesn't mean that it's true. So what do you have to establish that any of this is actually real instead of just something that sounds cool to you? Because it sounds cool to me. I don't mind using books. I use books as metaphors all the time. And my friends know that I use Star Trek episodes as metaphors for, moral conundrums all the time. It doesn't mean that it's real.
Right.
It just means that it's helpful because the writers of that media has teased out a moral conundrum that might parallel something that we meet in real life. So what do you have that any of this is anything more than just some writers trying to express the difficulties we have in life? Because you're not just saying, I like to use Jesus as a potential sage-like person,
or God, or like spirit,
a god, or an exemplar, or something like that. You're also making claims about the nature of the universe. There is life, there is death, and then there's an aftertime where you live for either a little bit of time or a lot longer than that, and that there are standards upon which one must live, and there's a purification process, and there's a cosmic judgment of some kind, whether it's judgment of oneself. What do you have to establish that any of this is really real in the really real world?
I've never claimed that I could prove it to be true. It's what I believe to be true.
Well, why do you believe it to be true then? Why do you believe it to be true?
Because it dovetails nicely with the spiritual experiences that I've received, alongside with the gifts and lessons that I've learned through those experiences. It doesn't prove that it's true.
Right.
It's true insofar as it's caused a positive transformation to me. Moreover, in examples like Star Trek or Lord of the Rings, those works were created explicitly to be works of fiction. Nobody ever intended for us to believe that they're true.
So what about when people of the LDS Church, they have similar experiences that tell them that there is but one way, let's say, toward salvation, and their book was created not as entertainment, because it's not entertaining, but instead as a pathway to the true way of life, right? And they feel good stuff when they read it and they follow those rules.
Right.
Are they wrong?
I believe Yes and no. I believe that they're wrong, as many other Christians are wrong for believing that salvation and paradise are exclusive to them. That's where I feel that they're wrong.
I'm gonna stop you for a second, Joshua, just because we've gone exceedingly long, and it seems like we've gone exceedingly long, just so that you can give us what your personal interpretation of an experience is that you had and how it comports to a specific known theology. So that's what the entirety of the conversation seems to boil down to, is that I had an experience, and I'm affiliating that experience with this sect of known theology, and I'm going to attempt to explain why me doing that comports with reality. Right. So I totally understand that, and I appreciate the conversation, but we do have like a lot of other callers on the line, but call back some other time, and we'll see if we can flush more of it out. So I appreciate you.
Appreciate that. I have hours of things to say, but I'll definitely acknowledge that others have to share their piece, and that we only have an hour and a half or so collectively. So by all means, let the people speak. Amen.
There you go,
Joshua. Have a good rest of your day. See you later. Bye.
Sounds like he cares about being what he thinks is a good person and being non-judgmental and all that stuff. If we could replace the Westboro Baptist Church with Joshua's, I wonder where we would be.
Right. Well, I mean, if we could replace the Westboro Baptist Church with, I don't know, like anything other than the Westboro Baptist.
The U-Haul franchise.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. A McDonald's, something.